Hello, everyone. My name is Melinda Huntley. I am the Executive Director of the Ohio Travel Association, and today we are going to talk about travel trends and capturing visitors. What we'll talk about today, in summary, we're going to talk about who is planning to travel and when. We'll talk about what travelers are seeking. We'll address what's happening in the group travel market. We'll talk about some of the challenges we all face now, as well as what we can do about them. And we'll speak about some of the opportunities for capturing more travelers. One thing I just want to reiterate is that change is constant right now. That the data that I'm presenting you has all been collected within probably the last week or two. And that is a really important point to make. Understand that travel behavior is changing, travel sentiments changing, and this is basically a moving target. So, what I'm telling you is true today. I fully expect by the time we go live next week, there may be even some tweaks because we may know more. So, understand that what we're doing is presenting what we're seeing today, kind of a constant trend. Don't expect any major shifts to happen, but understanding that it's really important to keep attuned to what's happening in the market on an ongoing basis right now. So, who is planning to travel and when? Well, first of all, let's define what I mean by travel. And this is an industry standard. So, travel means 50 miles or more one way for business or leisure. So, when we talk about the tourism, when we talk about travel, we're not just talking about people who come in and stay in a community for a week or two or a long haul. We're talking about people who are going to visit your museum maybe from just an hour away. And so we all know that those people are important to any venue, any site, any business, and any museum. So that is the definition of traveler as we go forward. And I thought that was important to clarify. All right, so what is happening? Well, Americans are feeling better about traveling. In fact, the CDC just released guidance this week that said domestic travel is okay for those who are vaccinated, which just helps boost that perception of safety. There are fewer people who are avoiding travel altogether, but although you can see on this chart by looking at kind of that light purple, there's improvement in every single one of these parameters from a year ago to today. But still, there is a little more concern with conventions and conferences, as well as international travel. But you can see how vastly improved that folks are, travelers are saying right now, and Americans, about travel in general, or perception of safety in being able to travel. This is really important. So when do Americans expect to take leisure trips? This is a chart done by Destination Analysts that they just updated last week that shows when the expectations are. What we do know is that people are intending to travel this summer and that plans are being made. They're right now making plans. Another study done by Longwoods International said 88% of travelers have plans in the next 6 months. And what's really important about that is if you looked at that same question a year ago in March, prior to really the major shutdown of the pandemic, the 88% of travelers with plans to travel in 6 months is only 1% less than what they said to that same question prior to the pandemic. For a majority of travelers, as you can see here, vaccinations are going to play a major role in their willingness to travel. 34% will not travel till they receive the vaccination. 20% of American travelers are saying they'll wait until the majority of Americans are vaccinated. 19% said they'll wait until the majority of people in their destination they're interested in are vaccinated. So isn't that interesting? So 19% are saying, well, let's say I have a museum in let's see, I'm planning to visit, I don't know, Columbus and some museums in Columbus, that these travelers are saying they're going to look at the vaccination rate in Columbus before deciding to come. That's really a fascinating statistics, I think. But 39% of American travelers are saying that the vaccine has no impact on their travel plans. This is also, this is by destination analysts. And the reason I put this in here is for understanding that there's right now not a lot of variance between generational groups. So since March of last year, Destination Analysts has been tracking how comfortable people are in being marketed to for travel, or how comfortable they are in traveling. That red line indicates, if it goes over that red line, it means people are ready to travel and they want to hear about destinations. And you can see up until, boy, the end of February, didn't matter what generational group you were from, you weren't at that point yet. But now, if you look at the far right, you can see there isn't a lot of difference between the different groups, that they are all indicating a strong interest. I do want to point out, though, that the yellow line indicates in this study, boomers are older. And I really wish a survey had broken that out between boomers and seniors, because boomers, as you're going to see in a minute, they're getting vaccinated. They're among the first to get vaccinated, and they are a little more willing to go out, and they are going out. So I think if this survey would have broken out those two groups, that you would see that yellow line even higher than where it is now. So again, we talk about the generational groups. You can see boomers expect to take more trips, and they're anticipating spending more money. So it's not just about which group is willing to go out. It's also about maybe how many trips they're going to take and what's the level of spending. So for instance, if a millennial is going out and they're just going to outdoor recreation areas and they're not going to, stop at a restaurant or visit a museum or buy something in your gift shop, their spending's a little further down. So this just gives you, there's not a whole lot of variance on this, but you can see that they are anticipating to spend a little more. All that being said, we've been watching what's happening as people have been vaccinated. And, what we were able to observe is that many businesses are reporting that bookings from 65 plus are higher than they were, maybe even pre-pandemic. So we are seeing that people who have been vaccinated, they're ready to go. They are going to travel. They are traveling right now. In some cases, even at a higher rate than they were maybe pre-pandemic because of all this pent-up demand. Also, we're seeing a lot of multi-generational. So, a lot of folks have been separated from family, visiting friends and family, which we'll see later is such a huge indication and a huge motivation for traveling, that we will, in all likelihood, see more multi-generational travel. So what does that mean for a museum? That means, how do you market to these multi-generational travelers? How do you market your experience as a place where you can have experiences and build relationships with the family? But also, how do you, from an exhibitory standpoint and experience standpoint, how do you cater to those multi-generational groups? All right, this is a hot mess, and don't freak out about this, but I thought this was really fascinating. Again, going back to Destination Analysts and their report on April 6th. So at the time of this recording, it's this week. Remember when we showed you the generational travel, and anything above that red bar at the bottom, the light pink bar, means readiness to travel. If you look at the inset on this graph, it doesn't matter what those individual lines matter at this point, what they mean. What really is of significance to me is look at all of them are at or above that pink line. Anything below that pink border meant, no, they're not ready. Don't even bother talking to me. I'm not ready to travel. But we can see it doesn't matter if it's urban, if income level, age grouping, what type of hotel property they're seeking. All segments are potentially marketable right now. And that's the most important thing to pull from this particular slide. So, what are travelers seeking? What do they want to do, and what's important to them? Well, we know that it boils down to a few things. You know, we're going to see more road trips, continued road trips. We're going to see more domestic travel, less international travel. And in this survey, we may see fewer trips taken. But understand this isn't broken down by the generational group. So maybe, you know, before we saw where boomers are expecting to take more, it may balance out a little bit. So they are most definitely, American travelers are looking to drive to a destination and opposed to fly, which is great for Ohio. We are a regional drive destination. So this is a good opportunity for us. What this does though, however, is basically we're going to have more competition for those road trips because every state around us is also seeing this data and they're also going to go after that road trip traveler. Looking at Longwoods, this was fielded beginning of March, only because this was the last time they had specifically asked this question. Activities travelers are planning to do on their next leisure trip, 45%, visiting friends and family. And we're seeing this consistent regardless of which research firm is conducting the research. Visiting friends and family, visiting people they haven't seen for a while is going to be a major motivator. Beaches, waterfronts, road trips, shopping, parks, you know, outdoors, exploring a city. Still, it's at 23%. We're going to talk about that. Outdoor areas, hiking, biking, and museum and galleries in this particular were listed at 16% are the things they were planning to do on their next travel destination. Speaking more specifically to museums, this one is done by Impact Research, Impact Experience Research, and this is a market analysis of exhibit-based organizations such as museums. And the yellow, kind of the yellow gold line indicates what they intended or their visitation in January of 2020. The darker one is, of course, looked at the latest on January 2021. And so what this does is kind of creates a forecast for what you may anticipate. Again, research is research. The actual behavior could be very different. So, and also because Ohio, again, is a road trip destination, has a lot of different offerings, has some amazing assets, we are likely to, you know, perhaps recover a little quicker. But what this study said is that the 2020, the actual numbers of visitations to exhibit-based organizations, such as museums, was at about, well, almost 41% down. They are projecting 2021 that we will be at about 72% of the normal, right? The 100% level, the January 2020 level. And then that museums will be almost back to pre-pandemic numbers with a 98.8% by 2022. So what about groups? Because we've talked a little about the leisure. We've talked a little bit about you know, the anticipated travel, the anticipated intent, what they're looking for, what's important to them. And so that is largely just in the entire universe of travelers. So what about groups? Because that was something specifically that folks have wanted me to talk about. And we do anticipate that group sizes are going to be smaller, but there's some really exciting things happening that I wanted to share with you. So when are groups planning tours? This is a look at when group tour operators are planning to get out on the road as of, I think the study was done in January by Group Tour Magazine. And you can see April through June, so right now through June, that they are planning tours for April through June, which is normally when they would have a higher number of tours scheduled for many, many tour operators. What I want to say is that and I'll talk about this in a minute, so the Ohio Travel Association also produces Heartland Travel Showcase. So we have a network of 1,200 group tour operators from around the country. We talk to them on a routine basis. We've been on Zoom calls with these operators, all year long, all during the pandemic. Many never stopped. Many tours were still going. And we are, hearing back from many of our members and many of our suppliers through Heartland that they are booking tours. So we're hearing from museums and destinations that the tour operators are actively booking, and they are, they're on the road and they're going out. The other thing to remember about group tours is there is a longer lead time. So, when a group plans a tour, it is often, they're planning a tour, often not within the calendar year. From a tour operator perspective, many times they're planning well into the following year. So some tour operators are booking into 2022, some even into 2023. Group leaders have a shorter time frame for booking, and those group leaders are places that are organizing tours specifically for a collective group. So maybe it is a church group that wants to do a tour, or a school that wants to do a tour, and they have one person that is coordinating those efforts. Those would be group leaders, where the tour operators have that longer lead time. All right, so what about the number of group travelers? When asked how tour planners are evolving their business to accommodate the new safety protocols, 68% report that they're limiting the number of participants. And this, we're hearing from our operators as well. They're not moving with full buses right now. They're not moving with 40 people on a tour. They're maybe moving with 25 maximum. So they're able to have that distance on the coach, on the bus, on the transportation to your site. So what does that mean? Well, think about it from a museum standpoint. And how do you help group tour operators and leaders during this time? Understanding that the changes to the group operation mean we have to look at our policies and what we have in place, even if temporary. But if we stick to pre-pandemic pricing policies, you're not going to be able to get some of the business. So here are some ways, and this was recommended by Group Tour Magazine, but we totally endorse these through Heartland Travel Showcase and our conversations. You need to have clear guidelines about the protocols that will be implemented for the comfort and protection of the client. So understand, you sell your museum experience to a group tour operator. The ultimate customer, though, is that tour operator's customer, right? So this group of 25, the tour operator books the experience, but it's those 25 people that are actually coming to your door, and they're going to experience what you have to offer. So make sure you have clear guidelines, and the tour operators and the tour leaders know what you're doing and what you expect from those clients as far as following protocols. Perhaps ease restrictions for cancellations. So a tour operator is booking a tour to a museum without having necessarily sold that trip. Once they book with the museum, then they go out and sell it to their customers. So, if they're not able to fill that bus, if they're not able to get enough people, to buy into this, then they may have to cancel. Or if something happens, they may have to cancel. So take a look at your restrictions for cancellations and see if they make sense during this time. And considering often refunds as an option instead of just credits, just something to consider. because those group tour operators are going to continue to come to you if you treat them well. This is a biggie. Reduce minimums and take a look at your pricing. And we'll address this more specifically, but even before the pandemic, group sizes were getting smaller. So this was a trend that was happening even before. But how long has it been since you took a look at your pricing policies for, let's say, a group tour? And most of the time, what we're finding is that the policies are still based on 40 people on a bus. So can you lower your minimums, even temporarily during the pandemic, and try it out to see if you can do a tiered pricing experience that makes more sense for what's happening in the marketplace right now with groups? And whenever you can, offer plenty of room during meals and activities and outdoor activities wherever you can. So let's talk about groups, and I want to share some information with you, which I don't think a lot of people know. As I said, the Ohio Travel Association also manages Heartland Travel Showcase, which is a group tour marketplace with tour operators meet with museums and attractions and CVBs and hotels, and they actually book business. And so we have, like I said, a network of tour operators and a network of suppliers from throughout the Midwest, because in order for us to attract national tour operators, we have to expand that reach and provide experiences throughout the Heartland region. We created in 2019 a series of innovation labs called Studio HTS because we started to see there were some challenges with the group tour market, with their products, with their messaging, and with the lack of connectivity between the partners who are on the tour, such as museums and restaurants and DMOs, and the tour operators themselves. So we created these really hands-on and free-flowing conversations, part education, part creative. I don't even know how to explain it. So it was about bringing all the partners in a room, all of these folks, museums and attractions and tour operators and everybody, and talk about ways we could really transform the group experiences in this part of the country. What are the challenges? And then we'd have these conversations. What can we do about them? And the other thing we have is we've been able to survey, and we have really strong relationships with more than 1,200 group tour operators nationwide who book in the Midwest. This has given the Ohio Travel Association really great insights into the group tour market. And I don't know really of any other group that at this point has this in-depth data and research and understanding, because we've gone straight to these folks and had these conversations, and it's just the coolest thing in the world. What that has enabled us to do is a lot of things. One, we just launched a series of regional group experiences focused on what travelers want most right now. So we took a look at 6 different thematics for a regional tour, and those people who were our partners in Heartland Travel Showcase this year submitted their experiences. So their experiences, their museums, they submitted that information, and we have them now into thematic itinerary, not really itineraries, because operators are coming from all points of the country. They're more like just a collection of experiences that tell a story and that relate to the theme. And we've also provided a series of educational workshops and workbooks and hands-on activities so people can create group tour experiences. And something else that's really super exciting. This is a look at just one of our themes. This is one focused on tranquility. What we did is focused on that a previous data that said what are travelers seeking right now? So we have one that focuses on outdoors. We have one that's focused on tranquility. Travelers are looking for a chance to relax and a sense of peace. So our suppliers, gave us all of these different experiences, many of them in Ohio, that a tour operator can package with other experiences to really create an experience, a group experience in a group tour that is focused on what travelers are seeking. And we did this for, like I said, 5 other themes in addition to tranquility. And we also used the feedback, used these conversations throughout the last few years, and are developing, hands-on tools. So how do you create memorable moments at your attraction or on a tour? And how do you link your experience at your museum to this overall group tour experience? So there's some transformational stuff, and we're very excited about it and very excited about the opportunities to really increase group travel in the Midwest. This area of the country, we are setting ourselves way far above our competition when it comes to addressing some of these things. And I think that's going to lead to more business. So the other thing we have done, and throughout all this process, is it's really given us a deep understanding of the group travel market and the opportunities. And, maybe if you'd asked me a couple years ago what I thought, I would have an entirely different answer. But now I see the sky's the limit as far as group experiences. And it is a responsibility not only of the suppliers, the museums and the restaurants and the hotels, but also the tour operators and working together. So Heartland Travel Showcase, great opportunity, is in Cleveland this year. So if you have ever wanted to go and meet with tour operators, now is the time. We are planning on going in person. It may look a little different, but we are planning to have this marketplace in Cleveland in 2022. So prior to even the pandemic, how have groups shifted? Well, we know from our research with our tour operators that consumers on groups were demanding more free time. So they didn't want to be led from exhibit to exhibit to exhibit, or from attraction, 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 that they wanted more free time, that they wanted time to explore on their own. So that's important to understand when you're structuring a group experience at your site. Smaller groups, again, this was happening before. They're looking for quality hotels. They're still very conscientious of food choices, healthy food choices, and maybe more special dietary needs. Choices is a big word, and that is precisely, it's the more free time, smaller sizes, and offering these group clients more choices. So if you have a site that maybe has, 2 or 3 different experiences you could create for groups, maybe you give even the individuals on the tour a choice of which adventure they would want to go on. Cancellations were happening, last minute bookings, obviously happening. We've seen that in the museum world for some time, kind of that shorter planning cycle. With the pandemic, that's increased, even more. So we also asked tour operators to take a look at the customer satisfaction rate of their visitors, like their clients, the people who are buying these tours and getting on the bus, and wanted to know what was the number one reason that someone would say that they had a bad experience. And so this takes a look, and I guess it's no surprise, but bad food. Number one. So if they have a poor meal, that could create like just this negative perception of the entire tour, of the entire venue. A negative experience at a hotel or a restaurant, and a negative experience at an attraction or an activity, which would include a visit to a museum. So, and you can see the dark line. Those are the percentage of people who said that's the top reason, number one reason why people left a tour with a bad impression. And the light blue line just kind of goes from the overall perspective, what was most important. Poor step-on guide or attraction docent. Also, look at that, is one of the top reasons why someone may report a bad experience. Making sure, your schedules, like if you say it's going to take an hour and a half to go through your attraction, then do that in an hour and a half, because the tour operators operate on a schedule, and they're saying the schedule goes awry. Too many attractions that they try to cram into a tour. Boy, lots of people are guilty of that, trying to put too much into it. Again, if you put too much into it, you don't give visitors or guests the opportunity for space to actually experience it and let it soak in. And then someone else, or another group of people, not someone else, but another group said limited number of attractions. But you can see nobody listed that as a top reason. So those two reasons kind of, contradict each other, but you can see it's more likely that we try to cram too much in than we don't have enough. Oops, sorry about that. So I mentioned that there was something exciting coming to you in August. Using all the research we have done over the last 2.5 years, the conversations we've had, our network of tour operators, the Ohio Travel Association, through Heartland Travel Showcase, is going to be launching a designation program for epic group experiences. We anticipate to launch this in August of this year, and we are super excited about this opportunity. Here's what it'll look like. We want to provide recognition to museums and hotels and restaurants and attractions who provide exceptional group experiences and exceptional group service. We also know that many of you have a hard time with like educating staff and having the tools, or really even knowing what a group tour might expect these days, and how to go above and beyond that experience that sets you completely apart from your competition. The designation, look, our goal is to designate as many as possible to set this region and set Ohio apart as being a place that groups will find their expectations met and beyond. But we will have some standards. So we have this divided right now into 3 different buckets of standards or requirements. One would be your basics, like what do you need to have in place in order to service a group tour? But we are being flexible, understanding not everyone has the same amount of acreage or the same amount of parking. So we'll provide options, but those will be basically group tour standards. The foundations, just what you need to accommodate a group. Experience standards make it truly epic. And we have done research on what makes a memorable moment. And we're developing an opportunity for you as a museum to create, how to take a group tour and go above and beyond the expectations. So we'll provide guidelines and give you the flexibility and the coaching and training to be able to do that for groups. And the third are learning requirements, which will be, brief videos, perhaps with some handouts, that you will have the opportunity to literally use those as training tools for your staff and volunteers, as well as keeping up to date with the changes in the group tour market. So we're really excited about that. And, this is something, I know we always say the pandemic and look at the silver lining, and gosh, that's been really hard. But this is one thing that was in place, starting to bubble up before the pandemic, and now we think it's even more important. And the pandemic has given us time to step back and really refocus on the tour operators, on the group experiences, and helping all of our suppliers, including museums, to really set themselves above and beyond. All right, so what are some challenges right now that we see as we go forward? I want to talk about some possible game changers, and then I want to talk about customer service. All right, game changers. Whether or not we have a smooth vaccine rollout, our rate of infection, and common sense government regulations have everything to do with all the research I've just shown you, and whether that continues to be on a trajectory forward or if it steps back a little bit. We know customer confidence in traveling, customer confidence in walking through your door is based on that rate of infection, how your safety protocols are in place, and as you saw earlier, really smooth vaccine rollout. We talk about the common sense government regulations. This was number 3. And understand I had put this slide together even before the governor's most recent mandates came down the pike this week, which, he talks about a common sense approach. So the requirements, the new state order, realizing all the other orders go away, this is the only one that matters, gives you more flexibility. And that's what we've been asking for with, many of our partners, including Ohio Museums Association. We've been asking for the ability for sites and for businesses to be trusted to implement the safety protocols, tell us what's important, we'll figure out how to make that happen. So we do see this common sense government regulation starting to happen, which can help us move forward. So when Impacts Experiences asked, this was in December, but we're not seeing this change dramatically. What would make you feel safe and comfortable going to a museum or aquarium or theater or zoo? Mandatory face masks, right? Number 1, availability of the vaccine, being outdoors. So look at the difference. The orange line is how people responded in October. And the audience for this survey were people who visit cultural institutions, museums, aquariums, theaters, all those things we mentioned and beyond. So the orange line indicates how they responded to this survey in October, and the darker line, how they responded to the survey in December. And this is a really good one to pay attention to, and understanding, what would make people feel safe and comfortable. And I'll just throw it out there. We just did a webinar today on the new standards and the new order. And I literally said, I said, look, it doesn't matter what the state mandates. What matters is what your customers and your guests and your museum folks feel are comfortable, right? Because look, we're in a customer service business. We're in a hospitality business. And if we're not doing what it takes to address this slide to make people feel comfortable, then we're not going to get the business. And so it is less about what the state mandates and more about what you're doing to make sure people feel safe and comfortable. Because as you can see from the research, and I base everything on data, it is all data. It's about show me the data, tell me how people feel. So much so that last week I reached out to our friends at Longwoods International. They're one of the largest research firms for travel, pretty much globally. And I said, I need you to ask this question, because we really didn't have an answer for this. How likely are you to visit a tourism attraction or a business, these days, that does not have clear protocols or mask and physical distancing in place? How likely are you to visit? And here's what they said. Longwoods put this question into this week's survey that went out to American travelers. 57% said they are less likely to visit you if you don't have protocols in place. And 28% are less likely to visit if you do have protocols in place. So this is about a decision that you have to make. And the 15% in the middle were like, doesn't matter. Require a mask, don't require a mask, I'm still gonna come. So, really what it's saying is if you don't have protocols in place, you risk losing 57%. of your customers. If you do have protocols in place, maybe you'll lose 28%, but only 16% are very likely, to not come. So this is really an interesting study because this is a decision that all of us are going to have to make. What do our customers expect? What do we need to do to make them feel welcome? How do we communicate that this is important? And just keeping on the same lines, this one, oh boy, this study came out, impacts just recently, I think within the last month. And they looked at people who had visited museums and attractions and zoos during the pandemic. So I think this can't remember when it came out, just in the last month or so, but they said basically in the 6 months previous, they measured what were some of the issues, right? What factors contributed to your less than satisfying experience? The number one reason why people had a poor experience at a museum was customer dissatisfaction, and that it increased 17%. So understand that anything that's to the right of that 100 index value is of concern. That's something that's shifted. That's something that needs to be looked at. So they went back and said, okay, so what was it about that visit that left you dissatisfied, that you felt was poor customer service? And this is what they found, that museums, aquariums, zoos, cultural attractions, things like that, the number one reason why people reported they had poor customer service was that folks weren't enforcing safety protocols. They weren't enforcing masks. They weren't enforcing the social distancing rules, not enforcing crowds, and maybe not permitting access. Those were the top ones, but those top three, like look at those top three, that's not enforcing safety protocols. So now we're in this universe where customer service is being literally translated into non-enforcement of safety protocols. That is a shift, people. That is like a major shift. And so again, it's about what do our consumers expect? What do we have to do to meet those expectations? And we've always been in a customer first environment. So what do we need to do? This particular slide, I said it makes my head hurt for so many reasons. And I almost didn't put this in here, but I think it's so important for you guys to see this. This particular, research company then went back to asked the other question. In terms of staff and volunteers, what do you perceive as the primary role when they visit your museum or attraction or whatever it is? 73% said managing crowd capacity, enforcing mask compliance, and enforcing safety distancing. So 73% said basically the number one role for someone who works at your attraction or museum is enforcement of safety protocols. What? And only 20% said greeting and waving. And then look at this, interpretation and demonstration, only 7% said the primary role. You can see why my head hurts, and I'm sorry if now your head hurts too, because this is such a paradigm shift. And so we have all these employees who we have trained to provide customer service and interpretation and experience development, and they're on the front line. And yet the customers are saying, if you're not enforcing what's happening around me, then I'm going to ding you. There's so many things with this issue and so many things we're going to have to deal with. And so that's why I put this as a challenge, because I see this continuing for a while. All right, so what are some opportunities? I'm going to end on a higher note, right? Now is the time to be out there in the market. People are planning. I don't care if it's individual or group, they're planning. Road trip travel, niche markets, and VIP experiences are the norm now. Sometimes we've looked at social distancing and maybe our limited capacity because of the social distancing is a hindrance, but from a consumer point of view, from an experience point of view, wow, like we're able to do things and provide more intimate experiences than perhaps we ever could before. And how do we leverage that? So this shows right now, Destination Analyst did this study and released it this week that said folks are planning right now. So if you look, 78% American travelers are literally, starting to dream about traveling, starting to plan a travel destination. They're starting to, research, look at some of the trend lines. So now is the time because people are tired and they want to do something. And if you look at it, from some of the other research too, look, it means maybe tightening up your geographic region. They may be more likely to visit you if they're closer to you. So they're going to be last minute trips. That's a norm. But they're ready to hear from you. So some of the other changes: road trip travel, linking your museum experience to the fact that people are driving. So they're driving. So how do you get on the radar that you should be one of the stops? Domestic travel, again, really great for Ohio. There'll be a growth in private family, or I call bubble tours, right? So maybe the pods of people will travel together and want to share experiences together. Outdoor recreation, open spaces. We're not seeing the demand for that go away anytime soon. This one's I love though, niche travel. What we have seen is that people who are really passionate about a subject or an activity are more likely to put safety precautions aside for their passions, right? So think about this from a museum standpoint. Your most avid visitors, right? What you offer, the story you offer, is really, really important to them. And they're going to weigh, do I stay indoors or do I go do this something that I really, really love? And that's an opportunity for you. So, perhaps some of your more avid visitors, whether it's, your donors, your membership base, which will continue, that growth, being able to market to them, they may be more likely to visit. But also those that just really are passionate about whatever story you tell. That's an opportunity for you because we have seen this happen in several areas of the state. And again, just understanding the safety messages and the enforcements are going to continue to be important. I can't reiterate that enough. So my predictions, and I don't have a crystal ball, so take it for what it's worth. But in my gut, just watching what's happened, talking to consumers, looking at the research, these are some of my predictions. Many of the trends that we saw edging up before the pandemic are likely to go into hyperdrive. The trend towards authenticity, the trend towards local grown experiences and food. And this isn't a market trend, but I'm going to throw it out there. Look, we were already having a hard time getting enough workers for our attractions. That's going to continue. So I see some of the things that we were limited by or that we had as opportunities pre-pandemic are just into hyperdrive with the pandemic in place. Smaller group sizes will remain for the most part. I truly believe that trend towards, particularly for groups, it's going to be here for a while. So it's not a waste of time to review some of the pricing policies for groups. Multi-generational will grow. It was growing before. I could have put it in the first bullets. Multi-generational will grow. It was growing before. It's going to continue to grow. We are going to face, as an entire travel economy, higher guest expectations. This was also happening prior to the pandemic. Our customers expected more from us. They're going to expect even more from us. And that also includes how we message and how we market to them. And I hope many of you had the opportunity to join Jameson and I on a webinar just a couple of weeks ago, where we specifically talked about some of the changes in market channels and some of that messaging. And I also predict, our guests are going to be concerned about safety for a long time. This pandemic is not over. We're going to have to learn how to function in this environment. But I think there's going to be some long-term results of that, and that our guests will always be looking at safety, even more so than they were before. So I see anything we can do to create experiences that help them feel more comfortable, and we share those experiences and we talk about those experiences, the more we'll be able to get those folks through our front door. Okay, so, and this one is a challenge. This particular study, this is another one that gives me a headache, that was done by destination analysts middle of March. And this was focused on the urban experience specifically. Now, we are seeing the urban market start to recover quite a bit. Even for leisure travel. For a while there, it was nope, give me small towns, give me outdoors. We're seeing that shift, that people are more comfortable going to urban environments, and that comfort level continues to climb. But when destination analysts asked if you were planning a trip in the next 6 months, how much of an effect do you feel the coronavirus situation would have on your ability to enjoy each element of an urban destination? Forget the fact that this says urban destination, right? And this is an issue. Travel and the perception of an area, it is based on an individual's perception, not necessarily reality. So what this is saying is that American travelers don't feel like they can enjoy festivals and events quite so much, or theme parks, or sporting events, or performing arts, or museums, right? Museums, 41% came up here. Our guests just aren't certain they're going to be able to enjoy these experiences as much. So I think there's a couple things that we can learn from this. One, maybe we focus so much messaging on restrictions and protocols in the past, which we've had to, right? So maybe that's part of it, that's the message they're getting, and they don't see how, with those protocols in place, they can have a good time. It may be because many of us have pulled our promotions, pulled our messaging about the excitement and what we do and why a museum is an educational and valuable experience and good for families and all those things we used to talk about before the pandemic. Are we talking about those things as much? Or have we completely gone to the, we're going to keep you safe, blah, 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 blah message? Like, both of these messages are important, particularly right now, right? So my challenge to you, and I think this is a huge opportunity for us, we need to start talking about how you can have an enjoyable experience. These things are important. They're not just important to have a good time. They're important to establish relationships with those you love, their shared experiences. And yes, we have your safety in mind. So show them that they can enjoy these experiences and that they should come to your museum right now. So thank you very much for your time and your consideration. And I put my email in here. If you have any questions about anything I've talked about, please send me an email. And I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.